recording this. So today we're going to talk about the economic model, and actually I have to go a little bit into what we call the budget model. So I've taken this class a couple times and it's painful because it's a lot of math. So what I decided not to do was a lot of math. Are you guys open for no math? Easy, easy button. So I am going to put in the chat box the Excel spreadsheet, download it onto your computer, save it on your desktop, and when I'm going through it, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to do it. It's just going to be able to where you can see it. So you can either split screen and you could do it while I'm showing you, or you could do it afterwards. So let me first of all put it in the chat. Everybody file. So it's I labeled the document as economic model calculator. Do you guys see that? Thumbs up, yes, you got it? You good? Mm-hmm. All right, so make sure you click on that and download that and you have that. It's an Excel spreadsheet. I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna go over a few key points before I dive into that spreadsheet, kind of the method to the madness on why we always start with the economic model. So let me share my screen first. So there's literally 3 slides. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over kind of the, again, like the method to the madness. I love the economic model because it's simple if you track your numbers correctly. So the first thing is I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with what you're going to start to track. So the economic model is one of 4 models. So if you have your red book, I'm going to reference 3 pages. I've tabbed mine out, so I'm going to reference it. If you want to grab your red book real quick, if it's in the other room. Otherwise, I will do my best to kind of illustrate it. But there's 4 models in this side of this book. Can anybody tell me what one of the 4 are? A little pop quiz. Anybody? Obviously, the economic model, you can't do that one because I already have that on the screen. What's one of the other models in this red book? You don't know? So the economic model is the first one. The second one is called the budget model. The third one is the lead generation model. And the fourth one is the organizational model. So this whole book is 4 models. And it goes back and forth and it kind of does a dive deep. Lead generation is usually very database heavy, where we're not talking about that today. Organizational model is building a team. So lead generation is super important, but that's not the one we're going to talk about today. And you're also not building a team right now, so we're not going to cover that one. So I'm going to do a little bit of a brief reason why the economic model is so important. The reason why the economic model is so easy to follow is it spits out how many appointments you need to have each month in order to hit your profit goal. So think about it like a Subway, right? I need to know how many loaves of bread I need to bake in order to serve the customers that are going to come through my door. So I think of it like of a Subway mentality versus a traditional real estate agent that is super entrepreneurial. Basically, they wake up and say, I'm going to be a real estate agent today and I'm going to wing it. I'm going to try to see if I can get some buyers and sellers to hire me as a professional. No one else does it that way. Doctor's office, dentist's office, Subway, everybody says, what is my projection of how many clients that are going to hire me or buy my service or product, right? So that's where we have to start with that when you're doing a business plan. And I always say, well, how much money do you want to make? And someone will say, well, how many houses do you want to sell this year? And you'll say it. Rather than guessing, this economic model tells you exactly how many houses you need to sell all the way down to how many appointments, okay? I just want you to kind of think about that. The one thing about the economic model is it talks about profit first. It doesn't talk about houses first. So in the example that I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you an example of a profit of $100,000. It's going to be, you're going to pay yourself, you're going to pay all your bills, and you're actually going to end up with a profit of $100,000. As an example, the book illustrates it as $1 million profit. I don't know if any of us are there yet, so I kind of chunked it down into a little bit simpler, more manageable number. So that's something I want you guys to be aware of, okay? And it's, if you're going on the economic model, it's on page 131. It's referenced in many spots, but if you go to 131, you can see here, this is the physical formula and all the math that they would do. So if you were being taught by a traditional instructor, he or she would have you fill in the blank and use adding and subtracting, dividing and multiplication. And I like to go to a spreadsheet where it does it for me. So that's what the spreadsheet's going to do for us, okay? But these are some things that you need to start tracking now, because what it also talks about is conversion rates. So I would take a screenshot of this. I'm also going to email you guys a PDF of this. But these are things you need to start tracking. So you need to start tracking them on a dry erase board. You need to start tracking them in a spreadsheet, whatever method you have. But when you're at January 1st, you need to start tracking these numbers. So this time next year, you'll have real numbers. You'll have an accurate number of what your numbers are. Everything I'm going to give you today is what is kind of an average, but these are some numbers that you need to know of. Yes, Catherine, go ahead.
I had one question about this. Do you track from January, like the actual calendar year, or do you track from your anniversary date to see if you're going to cap? That was one thing I was kind of wondering about.
Everybody has a mixed answer on that. We always set goals from January to December. If you're, because your cap is already built into the formula, like it already knows that's an expense. It's actually a cost of sale, actually. So it, regardless of when it happens, but I have seen people where like their anniversaries are like July or August, and it throws it off. So I personally do it as a January to December. But it might be slightly off because of where your placement of your cap. So I've seen it both ways. So the first thing is the number of listing appointments you go on. So the biggest thing on that is you need to know there's a difference between appointments and meetings. All of your appointments need to be the first time that you only count that person one time. And so how I do it on my Google Calendar, like when I set a listing appointment or a buyer appointment, I color code it red the first time. For me, I can literally tell you how many appointments I have. You can even see that in my coaching Google Calendar as well. But you need to be able to say how many appointments you have been on each month. So you see I have a new appointment coming up on Friday, right? And then so if you go back, you'll see if I have new appointments, it's been a while, they are red. There's another one. So make sure when you're doing, when you're working on number of appointments gone on and number of appointments gone on for buyers, number one, then you track them separately. You got to realize your real estate business is two separate businesses. There's a buyer business and there's seller business. There's different cost of sale and there's a different expense for buyers versus sellers. So make sure you're tracking things separately. And make sure, yes, you book the appointment, and if they canceled, don't obviously count that. If you go on multiple, like I know on the listings, we usually do the listing presentation, and then you go back for photos, and you go back for, different things. Don't count those multiple times. It's going to make you look like you're not converting your appointment well. Make sure you have a system to track your appointments gone on. Number of listings signed, number of buyers signed. Listing agreement signed, buyer agency signed, right? Sometimes you sign buyer agency and they never buy a house. They just don't. They just ghost you, or something happens with their credit, something happens, right? So make sure you're tracking that separately. That is not you writing any offers. Number of contracts written, right now, huge, because you could be writing 10 offers for the same buyer, correct? So we need to know that because we need to figure out what some of those conversions are. So start tracking those type of numbers, number of ratified contracts, and then the number of sellers and buyers closed, because we know not all deals stay together. There's going to be a fallout based on home inspections, repair addendums, appraisals and things like that. The number of leads received, and then the sources of those leads. It doesn't say that it's just where is your mix of your leads. So I've received 4 new leads in October. All right, what were the sources of those 4 new leads? and then your average sales price for sellers and your average sale price for buyer. They are going to be different. And literally, if you've sold 2 houses and they're both buyers, obviously you take the 2 house total divided by 2. I mean, the total volume divided by 2 to get your average. You need to kind of start to run your average. So these are some really key numbers to track. I'm going to assume, and hopefully that's not the case, that you're not tracking any of these right now. So what we're going to go into this training today is that you don't know what those are. I'm going to tell you that there's what they call the guesstimate of conversion rates on page 181. It has this chart and it tells you conversion rates. Because if you never tracked these numbers before, you're going to have some guesstimate of it before, for the later. So I'm just going to assume we're going to follow it out of the book. So when we get to that conversion rate conversation, that's going to be on page 181. And we'll talk about that. Okay. So, but start now tracking these. Come up with a spreadsheet, come up with a dry erase board, come up with something where all of these can be tracked. All right. Make sense? Any questions on that? We're good? All right. Then the largest thing that you're going to see is when you're spending money, these are the 3 things that are going to probably the most quote, expensive or investments in your business: education, training, coaching, lead generation, which is marketing and prospecting, and then leverage. Eventually you'll get into salaries, but leverage could be something like a transaction coordinator or a marketing coordinator, or maybe you pay somebody to drop your pop-bys at somebody's house or something, or maybe you pay somebody to deliver flyers to a neighborhood, right? I will tell you that these are always going to be your highest expenses or investment of your business. We'll go and dive into them. And there's specific percentages that you want to do. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is you need to go to where I see the asterisk on these is that a lot of agents aren't spending enough on lead generation and they're not spending enough on their education. So that's the things that you can double down. If you spend money on lead generation, it should give you a lead. If you go to education, training, and coaching, it should give you more skill so you get better at your craft, right? So just know that that's something when we start talking about the money, you're going to see those 3 areas are the highest chunks of money that you're investing in. And don't be scared of that. That's how you really propel your business forward. 3, 5, 10, 12, 15 years from now, you're using those 3 correctly, you'll double down on some of the investments that you've done. All right, and then we're going to dive into the budget model because we have to know some of where your expenses are. So that's kind of the layout of what we're going to talk about today and the method to it. So I'm going to minimize this, and we're going to actually go into the spreadsheet. So again, if you want to just follow along with me, that's fine. And then we can kind of spend some time talking about your numbers a little bit. So you'll see the tabs at the bottom. Economic model is what we're going to go to. It literally is the same thing as page 131 on the MRA book. What they did is they did invert it so that your profit is at the top in the green, and then it breaks it down by listings and buy side. You're also going to see in red is what the MRA is percentages are. So you'll see if you're ahead or behind. Now realize that the MRA is built on $1 million producer. And again, we're going to do it off 100,000 instead. Okay. So the second one is the budget model. We're going to need to do this. I'm going to show you a little bit of line by line of that because this number right here, it talks about expenses and cost of sale. Can anybody tell me what the difference, but what is a cost of sale versus an expense? That's kind of a foundational thing that we all have to kind of know what those words mean interchangeably. What's the difference between an expense and a cost of sale? Anybody have a guess?
The cost of sale is the money that you spend in order to sell a home or to get the money you spend in your business to receive income coming in. Did I say that right?
It's actually a little bit of reverse. So cost of sale is literally if the sale does not occur, the cost does not occur. So the beautiful thing about Keller Williams is that the cost of sale is fixed. So the 30% that Keller Williams takes from that commission, that's cost of sale. But if you don't sell a house, they don't charge you 30%, right? That doesn't exist. The 6% franchise fee that they charge you, if you don't sell a house, then you don't pay them a 6% fee, right? So if the sale doesn't occur, there is no cost. Expenses are fixed and variable, and you're required to spend that money even if you don't want to. What do we just have to pay in October? Did everybody pay that bill? It was $530.
Yeah.
It's a lovely bill, it's like the Halloween gift. That's the dues for National Association and local RAR dues, right? That was $530 we had to pay in October. That's an expense. If you sell 0 houses, they're still wanting their money, $530, right? So an expense is everything that you spend regardless if you sell a house, and a cost of sale only occurs if you do. The only other example of cost of sale if you're on a team, and if you have a buyer's agent, if you have a split. So my wife Kimberly's on a team. Tracy, her rainmaker, has a cost of sale because 50% of that sale is going to go to Kim, right? Because that's her split, right? So if you're on a team, there's going to be a cost of sale. So the reason why it's $28,000, I typed that in, is because we have a $25,000 cap for the 30%, and we have a $3,000 cap for the 6% royalty. Right? So Catherine, that was kind of leading to your question of like, how do we factor that in like from a month? The assumption is you're gonna cap, so that's a fixed expense, and let's just plug it into the spreadsheet, okay? Expenses, 50 grand, I'm gonna tell you how I got there. It actually is I'm gonna go through this and spit it out for you, but if you look at the very bottom of this, $49,980 is my expenses for the year. The cool thing is that if you want to start using this, it has a budget and an actual. So you could actually have this and use this all year long as a way to do that. Also, if you are choosing to use like QuickBooks or some profit and loss statement, there's a chart of accounts, and it has every single line item of what your expenses would be. If you want your CPA to love you, you would use something like this because he or she would make your life a lot easier. And then there's a summary of the P&L there. So we're only going to go over primarily the economic model. I'm going to dive a little bit into the budget model, but now you have this forever. Save this spreadsheet. It's yours, and you can customize it for whatever you want. All right. So I said the first thing is we're going to base it on we want to have a profit of $100,000. So I typed that in. I leave that right now like it is. Cost of sales 28. So if you're doing this spreadsheet alongside me, 100,000 and 28,000 and 50, if you can just pop those in. It's telling me that I need to have a gross income of $178,000. What is gross income?
It's the total amount that you need to bring in before everything gets deducted.
Yeah, it's the big check. So when you're saying I sold a $250,000 house, which is the example that I'm using here, times 3% is the commission average. That's the average commission, gross commission income is $7,500, right? This is also telling me how many units I need to sell. So I'm going to round up to 24. So if you took 7,500 times 24 houses, does that equal that? It should. So that's how you figure out, and it'll mathematically figure that out. So if I change this to 50,000, obviously the gross income. So the one thing is you got to realize that you do need to track what your gross commission income is. And after you cap, it's all yours, but at the beginning while you're doing these calculations. You'll also notice as we compare these percentages, this is MREA. This is what they want us to stay in. You can't overspend. One of the biggest challenges in real estate is we spend all our money and we don't pay our taxes. Those are the two biggest things. So if you look at this, at 50,000 expenses, do you guys think that sounds like a lot of money in a year? Sounds like a lot. I'm going to break it down. Believe it or not, it's not a lot. But I'm at 28% expenses, and the ceiling, the highest I'm supposed to be spending is 30%. cost of sale is 16%, which is great. As a solo agent, we call this the sweet spot. Staying a solo agent at Keller Williams has a huge benefit because your cost of sale probably will never hit 30%. So that's a beautiful thing. That's just extra profit for you because you're not paying it out to anybody else. Once you start building a team, your expenses go up because you pay for salaries and things like that. Once you have a buyer's agent, you're going to take some of your money and give it to the buyer's agents because there's a different split. So that cost of sale is going to go up. Okay. So this first spits out. Then let's look at the listing and buy side. So these are the things that we can change. So the sellers, the percentage of the total units sold, 50-50. So if this is saying that you're going to sell 24 houses this year, so that's 12 houses a piece. See, it says 11.9, 11.9. It's 12 houses. You're going to represent 12 sellers, and you're going to represent 12 buyers in 2021. Do you guys see that? Do you guys think that that's where you're at? Do you think you're equal? Which one do you think is going to be the higher percentage?
Buyers.
Right. Historically, that's where I have always been, but specifically right now, because inventory is super low, crazy low, we have more buyer transactions than we do have listing transactions. So it wouldn't be abnormal to change this to like a 40% on the listing and a 60% on the buy. You see how the numbers just changed? So now in this example, I'm always gonna bump up. I'm gonna represent 10 listings, and I'm gonna represent 15 buyers. This is where tracking your numbers is important. These last two talk about conversion rates. Percent sold conversion rate. So you have the listing, and then gets a ratified contract, and you get to the closing table. If you're looking at the conversion rate on page 181, which is the same triangle thing, these MREA things match up. The one thing that I would say is that it's updated a little bit. So the numbers that you see on your screen is a little bit different than the one on this book. Do you guys see the numbers on the book? The book says it's like 80% and 65%. So we're gonna use these percentages. So percent of sold conversion rate 70%. Do you think that when you list a house, it's higher than 70% or lower than 70% in the market we're in? Higher, yeah. If you price it right, it's a good condition and it's good location. So I probably would change this to 90%. Do you see how these appointments change a little bit? So 90%, I'm gonna change it back to 70%. I want you to look at the total appointment set. Do you see that it bumped up? Just a hair. So if we're at 90%. Appointment conversion rate. So you go on a listing appointment and they sign the listing agreement with you. So if you went on 4 listing appointments in the month, would all 4 of them say yes? In this example, 3 of them would say yes, 1 of them would say no. They're gonna list with Johnny Sue from Remax, right? But again, if you feel like if you're working by referral, it has a tendency to be pretty high. If you're working with for sale by owners, they're shopping around a little bit more, right? So you can kind of change that. But that's how many appointments per month for this one. And then the same with that. When I see these percentages of conversion rates really high rather than the MREA model, I want you to realize that that's not necessarily a good thing. I want you to feel great that you're a rock star. So you went on an appointment and you went on 2 appointments this month and you got 100% of them. They both said yes to you. Why do you think that's not good to have that high of a conversion rate versus they recommend 75? What is that telling you? You went on 2 appointments, they both said yes. That means 100% conversion.
You're not going on enough appointments.
Yes. So this is where you don't get the gold star or the brownie points for your conversion rate. What it's saying is that you need to go on more appointments. So if you're at 100, I literally coach people that are like, yeah, I'm at like 90%. Well, then you're not going on enough appointments. Your skill is so good that you need to go on more appointments. So I want you to keep this at 75 because our goal is to get more appointments. So look at this. So if you're going to make profit of $100,000, you're going to spend $50,000 in expenses. You're going to cap. Going to sell 24 houses this year. Look how many appointments you have to go on. I'm going to round up. So I'm going to go on 2 and then 3 buyer appointments. So I have to go on 5 appointments per month. What do you guys think of that number? Is that crazy number? Is that, but do you see how easy the economic model just simplifies things? Because if you were to say, I want to make $100,000 in profit, you have no roadmap to get there. Now you have this. You need this economic model to start filling in when we're doing tomorrow's class for 411 and GPS. You have to have these numbers because the first thing on the GPS is the goal. And it's going to ask you for how many units you want to sell. It's going to ask you how much profit you want to make and how many appointments you need to go on. And those 3 numbers you will not have if you can't calculate it based on the economic model. Questions on that? That straightforward? So you didn't have to do any math. It all did the math for you. Otherwise, you're in this crazy math. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes diving into the budget model, and then we're going to be done for today because I don't want it to be too overwhelming because I want you to play with it. But I'm going to give you some suggestions on how I got to the $50,000. You'll be surprised how accurate that is because I spent about 2 hours yesterday doing it, and I was like, dang. You spend some money, right? So budget model, we're going to click to the next page. First thing is this is commercial income. Most of us don't do commercial, so you don't have to worry about it. Again, 178, I got that from here, right? 178, I know my business is listing and buy side. So if I'm looking at this spreadsheet, wasn't rocket science, I put 89 for listing, 89 for buyer, and that means I'm going to do a gross commission income 178. Everybody understand where I got that number? Because you'll need to get yours in there, all right? Then it breaks down the cost of sale, which is what we talked about before. 25,000 is that 30%, 3,000 is that royalty percent. If you have a team, these other things would come into play, but most of us don't run a team, so you have that cost of sale. Now we're going to get into the expenses. I made little notations here. Once obviously you start using these, you'll delete them. If you have a salary for yourself, if you've created an LLC, if you've created an LLC and you're paying yourself either once a month or twice a month, that's where that executive salary would go. So I see historically people pay someone like $1,000 every 2 weeks, right? So that would be a $2,000 investment in your expenses there, right? But I'm assuming that you're not paying yourself at this point. We'll just kind of play it by ear. Contract labor. These are going to be people, and you also can, if you hover over these red icons, it tells you kind of what it is. But if you pay for anything for your business, so transaction coordinator, I estimated that the average transaction, the transaction coordinator that we have in shared services for coaching is $225 per transaction. I also made a decision that I'm going to spend $100 a month on the marketing coordinator, and she's going to help me market myself. So all I did was take $225 divided by or multiplied by the number of transactions that I did, or that I expect that I'm going to sell, right? Everybody following me? Same thing with marketing coordinator. I'm just going to say $100 times 12 months because I'm going to invest $100 a month, and she's going to help me grow my business. So that's how I came up with $7,150. CPA, I'm going to have somebody file my taxes for me every year. So I plugged in a number. Again, you're going to have to know what your real number is. If you pay yourself, there's payroll taxes there. All right, so there's the first simple math. Then these are some other options. This is lead generation. If you remember, lead generation is going to be one of the most expensive investments you're going to make in your business every year. So lead generation and prospecting 7240 is what I came up with. So offline or online. If you do Facebook ads, you need to start adding that up. So my budget is $100 a month. So that's how I came up with $1,200. Print, direct mail. I'm going to do open house flyers. I'm investing about $20 a month. And then I do farming postcards, and that's costing me $300 a month. Right? So I multiplied both of those by 12, add them together, and got to $3,840. Does all that make sense? Yeah. If you use, oh, not Zillow. If you use Zillow, OpCity, Realtor.com, these are third-party lead things. You'll have to use that. I'm not going to invest in internet lead gen because I think I can do it on my own. Events. We always coach you to at least do 2 events a year. I'm going to invest $500 for each event. So that's going to be a $1,000 investment in my lead generation events for 2021. Lead conversion tools, we pay for Mojo for you, but if you were to use it on your own, you'd have to pay for that. Meals, gifts, and entertainment, coffee and lunches. I budget $50 a month times 12. That got me to $600. Pop buys, $50 a month or $5 each. That's my budget. I do 10 of those a month. That's how I got to 600. Do you think that's high or low for lead generation? 7240, based on me explaining that. Do you spend more than that? Do you spend less than that? What's your feedback on that? Good, bad? Do you guys plan? Do you guys do you budget for those things? Do you budget for coffee? Do you budget for lunch?
I spend more in different categories.
Okay.
Like I don't do open house flyers anymore.
So Susan was saying also open house flyers are a little more expensive. So if you bump that up a little bit, I think it's important to kind of know what those numbers are. That's why I love this spreadsheet, because it's what my budget was versus what my actual was, because I may have thought, okay. And then listing services. Remember I told you that, but your business is 2 businesses. It's a buyer business and a listing business, seller business. So they break it apart. Where I see people get confused is that they're putting it in regular print. If it's an open house for another agent in our office, it would go under print. If it's an open house for your listing and you're doing flyers for your listing, it's down here. That's marketing for your listing. See the difference? So don't confuse that print. So my services, I provide staging consultation per listing, and then I also do photos per listing. And if you remember, half of my business was listings, half of it was buyers. I'm selling 24 houses. So 12 of them are listings. So all I did was take the $200, $100 for staging, $100 for photos, and times that by 2. I'm sorry, times that by 12. Does that make sense? That's how I got. That's the cost of me having listings. Marketing for print, signage, $100 a sign. Now the beautiful thing is that once you have the signs, you don't have to buy them again, but I put signage in there. Also, if any of you have ever seen those white posts, those are rented. A lot of times if you don't buy them off of Amazon, you have somebody else call them this utility. $45 is the cost of that. I'm again installing 12 of them for the year of 2021. So I'm going to have a cost of $540 on other. What about anything else? Listing services, listing management, other. What do you think some other expenses for a listing you may incur? What do you think it could be? I have cut people's grass before, because it looked pretty shitty, crappy, sorry. I have paid for a home warranty for the seller, like a negotiation. I paid for them to pay that $600 to get the deal to close. I've paid for carpet cleaning because different things. I've also paid for house cleaning because the house is a little interesting. So Marcellus was asking, what are the typical lead generation costs annually? I would make sure you break it down monthly first, and then it'll add up. But in the MREA book, to answer Marcellus's, if you want to know what the averages should be, in the MREA book, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, page 157, it has all of these things. So for lead generation at a 180,000 gross commission, which is roughly where we're at, because we were at 178, you should not be spending more than 10% on lead generation. So if you can't, I don't know if you can see that, which is $18,000. So My total lead generation and marketing is 7,240 is prospecting marketing. Lead generation for the same, literally it's the same gross commission income. I'm at 178 versus 180 in the book. It says 18,000. So I'm not even spending enough. So according to the model, I need to be spending more money on my lead generation. Does that make sense? Does that answer that question, Marcellus? And then we talked about that. So different things like that. Rent, occupancy, you shouldn't really have much in that. Most of us don't have office space, but if you would, that's where that would go. Telephone service, I put my cell phone in there. So my cell phone bill is 150 bucks a month. That's how I throw that in there. If you have any website maintenance, hosting fees, that would be in there. Like if you bought any domains, that would be where that is. Technology, LOEMs charges us $25 a month. If you realize that monthly bill that we get, $25 of that pays for command and your app on your phone. It pays for Kelly. It pays for all that. What else is on there? Do you have your cell phone by itself? I do. So I have mine separated. So the question is, do you have your cell phone on an account? Like I want it to be a business expense. So it's not lumped in with my wife and my daughters. It really depends. If you're going to write it off on your personal taxes, then obviously you can't calculate it in here. So you need just to make sure you can't double count it. So be careful about that. Education and coaching and training. So this is something, again, this is going to be a big expense, and yet it's probably the biggest investment. So it's a little bit forward thinking. Education and training. My budget is $250 a month. So I multiply that out. So my goal is to find, and maybe it's not even real estate training. It's just stuff I want to learn and books I want to buy and things like that. Travel and lodging. I always budget $2,000 because for family reunion mega camp, they typically are in Las Vegas or New Orleans. Because we're in virtual world, $0. Beautiful. It's amazing. You save money because of crazy stuff we're doing. You want to also coaching and consulting. So if you're paying a flat fee to your coach, then that's easy to calculate. If not, you need to see how many houses, what you paid your coach, and divide that out by 12 to get that average. So even though it's not kind of all done, 2021 hasn't occurred. I personally pay $1,000 a month for my coach, so it's simple math. I can just put $12,000 in coaching right there. What conversion rate should we use for getting an appointment needed, contracts needed, Facebook ads? All right, Latanya was asking about conversion rates on Facebook ads. They're definitely going to be higher. Lower. So you need to probably go to like a 50% conversion rate. So when I'm on that other spreadsheet, and I'm on the economic model, let me hop off real quick to that. I'm assuming you're probably getting buyer leads off of Facebook. So you want to go to appointment conversion, you want to change this to 50%. Is what I recommend. Do you see how it bumps that up? So if you're doing some internet lead generation, bump that down because those are what we call have not mets. They're people you don't know. Hopefully that answers that question. All right, we're almost done. So that's coaching. Also books and Audible. Like if you pay for a subscription for Audible, that needs to be built into that. So I pay for Audible and some other various apps that I have. So I put that in there. Dues. VAR charges you $530 every October. That needs to go in there. Other education. MLS charges us $180 a quarter, and it also charges us $260 a year to use that lockbox. Right? So that's how I came up with 980. I multiplied that by 4, and I added that to 260. Make sense? Gas and maintenance, and then mileage. This is a conversation you have to do CPA. I don't track this. I track this using an app. I don't actually do depreciation. I use the Mileage IQ app, and it tracks my mileage. Once I go 10 miles an hour or greater, it starts to track it, and then it's like got this swipe right, swipe left kind of thing. Was it a personal, me to the grocery store, or was it me showing property? So you'll need to kind of calculate that. But if you're looking at, and on this chart, you want to be conservative. Gas is, if you're heavy with buyers, your gas is going to go up, right? You're showing a lot more houses. So I budget $150 because my business is more even. If you're super heavy on buyers, you probably need to budget more, right? You need to go up on that gas because that's how much it is. Also, budget $100 a month for maintenance, oil changes, flat tires, daggone new construction. I swear we've changed Kim's tire like 3 times this year. So you kind of build that up. Luckily, they're like $300 a tire. So when I budgeted $1,200, that's what I spent. Automobile insurance, errors and emissions insurance. You pay errors and emission insurance directly through your agent bill. Part of that $43 is 15 of it goes to errors and emission insurance. You have to have it. The cool thing is KW, it's super cheap. It's $15 per month, but you need to know that. Obviously your auto insurance, how much is it? Figure that out just for your car. Office equipment, this may go up because now we're working from home. So if you've purchased new laptops, lighting, new office chairs, things like that, you need to put that in there. If you look at equipment, according to this, you should be spending no more than 2%, which is $3,600 for equipment. I mean, laptops are sometimes $3,000. So that could get a little crazy there for a second. You also have on this chart on page 157, $4,000 or 2.2% for technology. So you can kind of fluff it a little bit if you buy a nice computer. Maybe that's technology instead as you go through. Office supplies, consumables. I would put your stamps in there. That's how I would recommend that. I do 50 a week, 55 cents, 3,200 bucks, 3,300 or 1,300. I mean, other office supplies, maybe that's another 1,200 bucks. Just pens, pencils, pens, pencils, Post-it notes, things like that. I do $10 to KW Cares for every transaction. I know I'm going to sell 24 transactions this year. So 240 bucks because I'm going to give a donation. If you do it to other charitable organizations, you might want to put that out there. Profit share. My goal is to have $1,000 a month come from profit share. So that's how I created that. That's an average of 5 people in my downline. So that's a goal that I have. And then it spits it out. See how that works? So you have to do the budget model in order to do the economic model correctly. Because this number, 50,000, came from the budget model. And so if you don't kind of do that exercise, this somewhat is not going to help you. Because if you put, let's see what these numbers end up with. If you change this to $10,000, it changes. You only have to go on like 3 appointments versus if it's 50,000. So all these numbers do impact what your total, how many appointments and things like that. So that's the economic model / budget model morphed together because you kind of have to have both at the same time. Let me make sure I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over with you today as far as that. Oops. Let me make sure I went through that. So we went through 157. We went through kind of, you have different variable expenses there. That's it. So tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we're going to be going into the GPS and 411. So what I'd like for you to do, you have a few minutes today, if you can do some self-study, is get this spreadsheet, downloaded it, make sure you're following it, line by line. The budget's going to take you a little bit of time because you're going to probably have to dig up some receipts or some things like that because you're going to need those 3 numbers. You're going to need how many houses I'm going to sell, buyer and seller. You're going to need to know what your profit goal is. And then you're going to need to know how many appointments you need to go on. So I would like for you to make sure you do this exercise today, self-study, so tomorrow at 11, we already know what that number is. So we don't have to spend time doing that again. Any other questions? Do you update this actual as you go through the year? Absolutely. It's a moving, like you create it now, but use that actual budget. You'll realize that maybe you're spending a little less money or a little more money. When I see historically people's P&Ls at the end of the year, they don't spend enough on education and they don't spend enough on lead generation. And we know both of those contribute to your profit. Is the more educated you are, the more coaching you get, the better skilled you get. And the more your money you're putting out to get lead generation, get leads, you're going to make more money. That's just, but because we're sometimes in scarcity, I don't have any money, I'm not making any money, you get scared, I get that. But you have to invest in yourself. You've got to, those Popeyes, if maybe they're not $5 a piece, do $2 a piece. If you're not going to send out 300 mailers to your farm, spend, do 200. Scale it back that's manageable, but we need to be consistent with spending throughout the year. All right. Well, hopefully that was that helpful? This one's not the sexy one. This one's not the fun one, but it's the most important one to get that foundation. So thank you guys for your time, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 11 o'clock. We're going to do the 411 and the GPS. I'll be providing you with samples and completely those done, and giving you samples of the ones that you can fill in the blank as you see fit for your business. So I'll see you guys tomorrow at 11. And then I'll download this recording and I'll send it back to you literally by email, hopefully in the next hour. So if you want to watch this again, you absolutely can. Otherwise, have a great day. Bye, everybody.